Don't be jealous. That's what she said. Standing at the front door with her overnight bag hanging off her shoulder, her hair pulled back, wearing the gray sweater I bought her for Christmas 2 years ago, she looked at me, tilted her head the way she always did, and said those 3 words like they were harmless, like they were a joke between 2 people who still laughed at the same things. I'm Devin Stanley. I'm 38 years old. I'm a civil engineer. I know how to read structural failure. I know that the thing that brings a building down is never the event everyone remembers. It's the stress that accumulated long before anyone was looking. The hairline fracture in the foundation, the rust behind the wall. By the time something collapses in front of you, it has already been falling for years. My marriage was no different. I stood in the doorway in my socks and watched Triana load the car. I watched the way she moved, efficient, purposeful, the way she moved when she had already decided something and the decision felt good to her. Her overnight bag went in first, then a tote she had packed the night before, which I had noticed sitting by the bedroom door but hadn't touched, then her phone, tucked into the cup holder before she even sat down, prepared. Ready? She turned once, halfway to the driver's side, and looked at me. "Don't be jealous," she said. I smiled, the full smile, the real one. The one that uses your whole face so nobody can see what's behind it. "Okay," I said. She got in the car. She didn't look back a second time. I stood there until her taillights disappeared around the corner of our street. The morning was still and gray and smelled like someone nearby was cutting grass. A neighbor's sprinkler was running somewhere. Normal sounds. A normal Friday morning in a neighborhood full of people who had no idea that the man standing in the doorway of the brick house on the corner had not slept in 11 days. I went back inside. I closed the door. I stood in the hallway for a long time and looked at the coat hooks by the door. Her other jacket, the cream one, the one she wore when the weather couldn't decide what it was doing, was still hanging there. I took it down. I folded it carefully along the seams, the way she liked things folded, and carried it to the kitchen table. I set it in the center, straightened it once, and stepped back. I looked at the house. At the counters I had wiped down that morning before she woke up. At the dishes drying in the rack. At 9 years of the life we had built together, arranged and quiet and entirely unaware that it was already over. Then I went upstairs to finish packing. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. It started on a Tuesday in February, 2:04 a.m. I know the exact time because I had been lying awake staring at the ceiling when Triana's phone lit up on the nightstand beside her. She was asleep or pretending to be. The screen glowed for 4 seconds, then went dark. She rolled away from me before I could see the name. Just rolled, smoothly like a reflex, like she had been practicing the movement in her sleep. I didn't reach for the phone. I didn't say anything. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling something shift inside, my chest the way a floorboard shifts when the foundation underneath it is quietly given way. I had no proof of anything yet. I had only that feeling, the one you get when your body understands something your mind is still negotiating with. I got up at 5 a.m. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, and I opened the drawer where we kept the takeout menus and the spare batteries and the random miscellany of a shared life. I pulled out a blank notebook. I wrote the date. I wrote the time. Then I closed it and got ready for work. The text was 3 words. I was not supposed to see it. She had been in the shower for 6 minutes. I know because I heard the pipe stop. And her phone was on the kitchen counter where she had left it charging overnight. I had only picked it up to move it out of the way. The screen woke up in my hand. And there it was, in a thread with a name I half recognized from a work event 2 years ago. "Miss you already." She hadn't even left the house yet. We had just eaten breakfast together. I had made eggs. She had talked about a project at work, something about a rebrand, and I had nodded and refilled her coffee, and everything had been completely, perfectly ordinary. And this man, this person whose name was sitting in her phone like a stone dropped in still water, had already been thinking about her that morning. I scrolled up. I don't know why I expected to feel worse than I already did. There were 47 messages. I read every one. Then I set the phone back on the counter, in the exact position I had found it. She came downstairs 7 minutes later, smiling, smelling like vanilla. I smiled back. I did not cry. I want to be honest about that because I think people expect a man to cry at a moment like that, or to put his fist through a wall, or to do something that matches the size of what he is feeling. I did none of those things. I finished my coffee. I washed the breakfast dishes. I dried my hands on the dish towel we had bought at a farmer's market in Vermont on our 5th anniversary. Then I got in my car and drove to a bank on the other side of town, one Triana had never been to, on a street she never drove down, with tellers who had never seen my face. I opened a personal account, transferred a small amount, small enough to be invisible against the noise of our joint finances, a rounding error, something that would never raise a flag. It was not the first transfer. I had made the first one 3 months earlier, in November, when I still could not have told you exactly what I was afraid of. My hands knew before my head did. My hands had been building the exit before I admitted I would need one. Bryant Cole has been my best friend for 16 years. We met freshman year of college, in a dorm hallway at 2 a.m. over a broken vending machine, and we have been friends ever since in a way that certain men are friends, without a lot of words, without a lot of performance, but with a depth that doesn't require maintenance because it never corrodes. We played basketball every Saturday morning. That Thursday before Triana left, we met at the court. We were 40 minutes in when Bryant just stopped dribbling. Mid-court, he held the ball against his hip and looked at me the way he had been looking at me for weeks. Quietly, carefully, the way you look at someone when you already know, but you're waiting for them to be ready. "You already know, don't you?" he said. Not a question. I bounced my ball twice. 3 times. I looked at the chain-link fence at the end of the court. "Yeah," I said. He nodded once. That slow, deep nod, before we reached our cars. He handed me a folded piece of paper. "A name. An attorney." "I already called her," he said. "Told her you might be in touch." The attorney's name was Sandra Holt. I called her from my car, parked in a lot of hardware store 3 miles from our house, on a Wednesday afternoon when Triana thought I was picking up light bulbs. Sandra Holt had a voice like someone who had heard everything and was no longer surprised by any of it, which was exactly what I needed. We talked for 58 minutes. I recorded the call on my phone, legally with her knowledge, because I wanted a timestamp that could never be argued with. She walked me through everything. I already knew most of it. I had spent 3 weeks reading at night after Triana fell asleep, phone turned low, learning things I never wanted to know. Sandra confirmed what I had prepared, corrected 2 things I'd gotten wrong, and told me I had been more thorough than most people she worked with. "You've been planning this a while," she said. "Since February." I said. There was a short pause. Then she said, "Okay, when you're ready, call me." I bought the light bulbs. I went home. I made dinner. 3 days before she left, I went through the house systematically, room by room, like I was doing an inspection. In a way, I was. I pulled every document that mattered: birth certificates, tax returns for the last 6 years, the property deed, both car titles, insurance policies, the retirement account statements, the investment account we had opened in year 3 of our marriage because we were going to be responsible adults who planned for the future. I scanned everything on the home printer. I saved it all to an encrypted drive. I gave the drive to Brian the next morning over coffee without explaining. He took it without asking. I also updated the beneficiary contact on my retirement account, quietly through the online portal at 11:47 p.m. while Triana was watching something in the living room. I could hear the television through the wall. A laugh track, something light and easy. I sat at the desk in the spare room and changed the information and logged out and sat there for a moment, listening to her laugh at whatever was on. Then I closed the laptop and went to join her on the couch. 8 months earlier, a firm in Denver had called me, senior structural engineer, the kind of role that has your name on a door and your judgment in the room when the real decisions get made. I had turned it down in the space of 1 phone call, standing in the parking lot of my office, because at the time I was still trying, still telling myself that what I felt in the house at night was just the natural friction of a long marriage, still believing that if I stayed patient and present and quietly good, things would find their way back. I called them back in March. The position had been filled, but there was another opening coming in July. I told them to hold it. The man on the other end of the call, a director named Paul, who had a firm handshake voice even over the phone, said they could give me until May for a decision. I said I would not need that long. I told my current firm 2 days before Triana left. My boss, a man named Gerald Watts, who had known me for 11 years, shook my hand for a long time and said nothing else. That silence was a kind of blessing. The night before she left, we ate dinner together. Pasta, something she had made from a recipe she liked, with crusty bread on the side, and a glass of wine each. We talked about ordinary things, a neighbor's new dog, a show she wanted to watch, whether we needed to have the gutters cleaned before winter. I was present for all of it. I asked questions. I refilled her wine. I cleared the plates without being asked. After dinner, she packed her tote bag in the bedroom while I cleaned up the kitchen. I could hear her moving around upstairs, the closet opening, the zipper on the bag, the particular creak of the floorboard near the bathroom door that we had always meant to fix. Normal sounds, the sounds of a life. I dried the last dish and stood at the kitchen window and looked at our backyard. The oak tree we had planted in year 2 was full and dark against the night sky. I remembered us digging that hole together on a Saturday afternoon, arguing cheerfully about how deep it needed to be. She had been right. I had admitted it. We had laughed. I turned off the kitchen light and went upstairs to bed. I loaded the truck in the dark, before dawn, moving quietly through the house I had shared with Triana for 7 of our 9 married years. I did not take much. Clothes, the encrypted drive, my grandfather's watch, which had been on my wrist or in my drawer every day since he passed it to me at 19, the framed photograph of my mother that lived on my nightstand, her laughing at something off camera, caught mid-joy, the way I always want to remember her. I stood in the bedroom doorway for a moment and looked at the room in the gray pre-dawn dark. Her side of the bed, the vanilla lotion on her nightstand, the cream jacket still hanging on the back of the chair because she'd packed the gray one. I reached into my pocket. I held the wedding ring for a moment, just held it, feeling the weight of it, the 9 years of it. And then I walked to my nightstand and set it down in the center of the surface. Carefully, deliberately, not thrown, not hidden, set down like a period at the end of a sentence that had taken a long time to finish. Then I walked out. I called Bryant once, from a rest stop in Ohio, just after noon. The sky out there was enormous, the kind of flat, wide-open sky that makes you feel like the world is exhaled. I had been driving for 6 hours. The truck smelled like coffee from a gas station cup that had gone cold somewhere in Pennsylvania. Bryant picked up on the second ring. "I'm good," I said, before he could ask. "Okay," he said. That was most of it. We talked for 4 minutes. He told me he would handle things on his end, which I knew already. I told him Denver was about 14 hours out, which he didn't respond to because Brian understands that some information is just for the air, not for reply. Before I hung up, he said, "You did the right thing, Dev." I didn't answer that either. I just said I'd call when I got there. I pulled back onto the highway. The flat Ohio sky went on forever in every direction. I turned the radio up. Not loud, just enough to fill the cab with something other than the sound of my own thinking. Triana came home on a Thursday. I know this because Sandra Holt called me that evening, professionally, to confirm that the papers had been received and signed for at the house address. Everything was in order. Everything was moving. That was all I needed to know. She would have walked into a clean house, dishes washed, counters wiped, her cream jacket folded on the kitchen table. Place in the center, seems aligned the way she liked things. She would have moved through the rooms and noticed, one by one, the absences. His side of the closet, the nightstand, the photograph of his mother that had always been in the same place. And then she would have seen the ring. I was not there for any of it. I was in Denver, in a hotel room on the 14th floor, looking out at a city I did not yet know, eating takeout from a place I had found by walking until something looked good. My phone was a new number. The old one had been disconnected at 8 a.m. that morning. She called it, I was told later. It rang twice. Then it said the number was no longer in service. I had already started.